Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations by Practical E-Commerce. I'm Kerry Murdoch. The adoption continues of product videos on e-commerce sites. Most every merchant, seemingly, can benefit from product videos, and we are joined today by a product video expert. He's Craig Wax, CEO of Invodo, a video company for e-commerce merchants, and he's here to discuss product videos that convert. Well, Craig, thank you for your time today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Craig, we're talking about product videos today, in particular the topic of videos that convert, videos that help merchants increase sales. My first question for you, as an expert on product videos, is what factors determine whether a product video will actually increase conversions?
There are a couple of things that really drive video effectiveness. The first one would be making sure that the majority of the video is really focused on the product itself. Oftentimes, people can get carried away focusing on the presenter, and if that's the case, then you're going to lose the consumer, because the consumer is really there to learn about the product itself, which brings me to the second piece, and that is you really need to explain the features and benefits of that specific product and go into detail. As you're describing the product, talk about what makes it unique, and if there are certain things about the product that make it for some people but perhaps make it not for others, it's okay to highlight that as well, because one of the things that good product videos do is they prevent someone from mistakenly purchasing an item, and you can really prevent that from happening by really letting know the viewer who this product is for and what it can be used for.
Is there a length that you advise merchants not to exceed on a product video?
Length really varies depending upon the type of product that you're creating the video for. Typically, a video is going to be somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds, but in some cases like jewelry, you can have a video that's 30 seconds, and in other cases, for a complex product like a smartphone, you're going to go 2.5, even over 3 minutes, depending upon how many specific features you want to highlight in the video. And we always say that length is less important than quality content, and if you've got really important features and benefits to communicate, the viewer will stay with you because they're pretty far down in the purchase funnel if they're watching a product video on the product page.
For our listeners that are tuned into this, they may be producing video themselves. They may be outsourcing their video production to a company like yours, Invodo. But for those that are producing video themselves, would you suggest that they, prior to recording the video, would you suggest that they write a script? Would you suggest that they write down talking points? Would you suggest they sort of ad-lib to give it a spontaneous feel? What should be in their mind before they turn the camera on?
Well, before they even get to that point, I would just say that there's a lot of concealed complexity in trying to do product videos on your own. And you touched on a number of things that you really need to figure out in advance of turning the camera on. Getting the right talent, writing the script, and finding somebody who is comfortable in front of the camera. Those are all key things, not to mention what takes place in post-production. But if you are going to do it yourself, I do think writing a script is very important if you're going to have somebody who is only somewhat familiar with the product and not comfortable being in front of a camera. Now, if you are the product expert, perhaps you design the product yourself, and you're very comfortable speaking in front of a camera and you're not going to stammer or stutter, then you may not need a script. But in most cases, we've found that without a script, the majority of the content is choppy, a little bit disjointed sometimes, and people also tend to stutter and will throw in ums and you knows, and that doesn't make for the best presentation.
That leads into our next question, which is mistakes that you see merchants typically making. What are the most common mistakes? Perhaps you just named some of them there, but what are the most common mistakes that you see with videos, either videos that merchants produce themselves or videos that perhaps are professionally produced?
Well, I'll start with videos that perhaps are done in-house. So one thing that is really tough to do is get good quality lighting and sound. So if you are filming yourself, there's a lot of complexity around setting up the lighting so you can see the product clearly. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make just because lighting is a science in and of itself. Then you have audio clarity. You need to make sure you have the right equipment to fully capture the audio so your viewers can easily hear what you're trying to communicate. And then another thing is being able to incorporate what I describe as see and say, which is you're talking about a product feature, you then need to shoot some B-roll and get in tight on that feature so the viewer can make the connection between what they're hearing and associating that with the product feature itself. And so those are all components that I think are important to sort through and make sure you have your arms around if you're trying to do it yourself. Now, if you're outsourcing it, I think one thing that sometimes happens is that video production companies tend to lose sight of what the objective of video is in and of itself. I mean, we're not trying to create Oscar award-winning videos here. We're trying to clearly and effectively communicate product features and benefits. And so a lot of special effects and graphics really don't have a place in these videos yet. Sometimes people can't resist the desire to infuse those into the video and make it flashier than it really needs to be.
We have listeners, I suspect, that are listening that are saying to themselves, videos really aren't going to help my business that much. I just don't think it's going to increase sales. And to those listeners, Craig, I wonder if you could give us some examples of what you've seen. I want to use an example here of a merchant selling, say, running equipment or running apparel. What range of a conversion increase would you expect that particular merchant, what range of conversion increase that particular merchant would achieve by implementing video, just to help our listeners understand the benefits?
Sure. Well, we're working with a sporting goods manufacturer very similar to what you described, and they did some pretty specific testing of product videos, and they saw a conversion lift upwards of 60% with the products that they ran videos for. And so that's not uncommon. There are a number of product categories where people have published very significant conversion lifts, and we've worked across any number of consumer categories, whether it's jewelry, electronics, apparel, furniture, large appliances, you name it. And video works across all categories, and there's plenty of information that's published on the internet that describes the conversion lifts. And so I would say if you're skeptical, just do a search, or you can even go to Invodo.com and go to our resources section, and we've listed a number of different retailers who've seen conversion improvement based on the use of video.
How do they track that? How do a merchant that's not using a platform, perhaps, that's had the video produced or that's doing it themselves, how do they track that?
Well, you're going to need to use some type of analytics program. So if you use an Omniture or Core Metrics, you can track through that. If you're using the Invodo technology platform, we actually have A/B testing built into our technology to where we can run those tests and then report the information back to you. That's typically the way you would measure the impact of video on your business.
You mentioned your company, Invodo. Tell us a little bit about that. You produce videos for merchants, but tell us about Invodo and what it is that you do.
Sure. Well, Invodo offers a full-service solution, and what's unique about our offering is that it includes all three components that you need to master in order to successfully do online video. And those three components are creating the video itself, providing the technology to host, stream, and deliver a player on the retail site, and then being able to syndicate or distribute that video out to wherever a consumer might want to see it, whether it's on the retailer site itself or on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, what have you. And most companies typically do either video production or the technology, and what's unique about Invodo is we put those two things together and we offer a full solution for our clients.
Give us some examples, Invodo clients or otherwise, that of e-commerce merchants that, in your view, do a good job with their product videos.
Well, I think a number of companies out there are doing a terrific job. Golfsmith's a good example, Toys R Us, Verizon Wireless, to name three. Moose Jaw is another one, Lenovo, Red Envelope. These are all companies that are integrating product video into the consumer shopping experience and delivering information to their customers that, quite frankly, you just can't get across in still images or text. You know, in a lot of cases, you want to see how a product functions, and without shooting a real video, and I'm not talking about static images that you put motion graphics around, I'm talking about real video showing how the product works, really adds a lot to that experience, not to mention the fact that consumers typically are not interested in reading a lot or putting a lot of effort into consuming information, and video is a very easy way for consumers to digest information.
Okay. We have just another minute or so left here, Craig. Anything else on your mind today for our listeners? E-commerce merchants, mainly smaller e-commerce merchants.
Sure. I think what I would end with is highlighting the fact that consumers are watching more and more video, whether it's just for general entertainment or helping them to make purchase decisions. They're actually watching about 40% more video on retail sites than they were a year ago. And they've come to expect that they're going to be able to learn about products through video, and that it's quite important for retailers to deliver on that expectation, because ultimately what will determine whether or not consumers stick with retailers' site is how well they're able to learn about the products and make decisions, and those retailers with videos on their site are going to win those customers' business.
Well, for purposes of our listeners, we've been visiting with Craig Wax. Craig is the CEO of Invodo. Invodo is as Craig alluded to, a full-service video production, hosting, streaming company for e-commerce merchants. That website is Invodo.com. That's I, N as in Nancy, V as in Victor, O, D as in David, O, Invodo.com. And Craig Wax, the CEO of Invodo, we want to thank you for your time today, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.